Today in the lab we're experimenting with this Amiga graphics card. This is a Retina card from Macro Systems, which you may recognize as the manufacturer of the Warp engine, a popular accelerator for the Amiga 4000, or from the Draco, which was a Amiga clone from the mid-90s that was sold in Europe. Now this is a relatively basic graphics card, but it does allow the use of pretty high resolution screens and bit depths for programs that support retargetable screens on the Amiga. However, unlike some of the more legendary cards like the Villagetronic Picasso 4 and Phase 5's Cybervision cards, this one's pretty basic. Doesn't have any method to pass through Amiga screens, and no scan doubler or flicker fix, not much of that. Now it does support up to 4 megabytes of RAM and some pretty high bit depths, but I don't know if I have enough RAM. I don't know actually how much RAM I have on this card. We'll maybe find out during this video. But my primary purpose with this is to test out multi-monitor support in the P96 software, also known as Picasso 96, and see what that looks like. It's a feature that I've been reading about in the release notes, but I haven't seen anyone do any videos or talk about it. So today we're going to get this card installed in the Amiga 2000, which actually already has a graphics card in it. It has a GVP Spectrum card, and we're going to hook up 2 monitors to this. I'm going to attempt to do video capture from both outputs and see what that looks like. So I've got the Retina, as well as a whole bunch of other stuff, installed in this Amiga 2000. So just to let you know kind of what I'm working with here, I've got a TechMagic 68060 accelerator, I've got the Retina card, I've got a Progressive Peripherals and Software Double Talk card, which I'm also doing some videos on. I've got my GVP Spectrum card here, and then I've got a Ethernet adapter from Villagetronic. Adriadne 2, I believe is the name of it. I'm almost out of Zorro slots in this Amiga, so this one's pretty full up. Looking here at the back, I want to talk about how I'm going to wire this up. None of the monitors that I have support Amiga native video, or at least none that I want to use for this test. So in this machine I've got an Indivision ECS, which scan doubles and flicker fixes that video up to, the VGA standard essentially, and that's coming out here. Now I'm going to wire that Amiga output to the input of the GVP Spectrum card that I already have. The GVP Spectrum has a pass-through mode where it can pass through Amiga native video, but it doesn't have a scan doubler or a flicker fix, which is why I have the Indivision ECS. So Amiga video is going to go from the Indivision to the Spectrum, and then the Spectrum will have its own monitor attached to it. Then the Retina card over here is going to have a second monitor attached to it. So in the end it looks something like this. This is the Spectrum output to its monitor, which I guess is going to be my primary monitor here. I'll yank this out so we can see a little more. This is the output from the Retina, which I yank out. And then this cable right here, which is really just a short little cable, is the Amiga video to the Indivision's pass-through. Alright, so after a bit of tinkering, we have this set up. On this monitor here, we have my primary card, which is a GVP Spectrum. And then on this monitor here, we have output from my secondary card, which is the Retina. Now I'm going to try to hook up some screen capture stuff, because this is far from perfect, but it is very interesting. Alright, so we're screen capturing now, and this screen capture setup was a little difficult to set up, but let me describe what you see here. So in the big window here on the left of the screen, this is my primary display. It's coming out of a GVP Spectrum, and the native resolution is 800 by 600. It's upscaled a little bit by my VGA to USB converter, but I think it looks alright. At least it should be legible. Now, down on the right, and I don't have this visible just yet, you'll see my secondary video card, which is the Retina card. That's coming in at 640 by 480 and is being captured by an open source scan converter. Now, I had some trouble getting the Retina to be captured in the first place. Seems like maybe the timings or the quality of the signal is not exactly what some of these VGA capture devices I have wants. And quite frankly, the picture quality is not great coming off of it. But I think it'll be good enough to show my point here and to show what we're trying to do. Now I'm going to start here just using the one display so that I can kind of establish some baseline concepts so that the rest of this video makes sense. So in Amiga OS there's these concepts of screens. Now I think in modern operating systems we would probably call these virtual desktops and not screens, but that's how it's been referred to in Amiga OS for forever. And there are multiple different types of screens, and the one people are most familiar with is probably the workbench screen. But you can have different kinds of screens. And I'm going to use a program called Mode Pro, which is short for Mode Promotion, to help me demonstrate this. So Mode Pro is a commodity, and I have a hotkey set up, but I'm just using my mouse here today. And what Mode Pro allows you to do is to define all kinds of different parameters around screens, and it's very flexible. It looks complicated, but it's not that complicated. One of the most important things to note or to understand about Mode Pro and screens in general is that besides the workbench screen, Amiga OS has the concept of public screens. So these are named screens. So if I want to have an application show up on a different screen, then a public screen allows me to put a name to that screen, and that program, when it launches, will either create and open that screen if it doesn't exist yet, or if it already exists, it will, display its UI in there. So I have here in Mode Pro set up some public screens. One of these includes this text edit one. And if I go here into my tools, text edit, and if I look at the tool types for this icon, we'll see a tool type here that says public screen or pub screen equals text edit. Now, not all programs support these tool types, but TextEdit does. And so what this means is when I launch TextEdit, this is going to look for a public screen called TextEdit. If it exists, it will display its UI there. If that screen does not exist, or rather has not been instantiated, then it will instantiate it and then display its UI. Now, Mode Pro adds in the functionality where it lets me, configure a lot of details about this screen. And it also allows me to select the screen mode that I want for this public screen when it's created, right? So promotion here is requester. So when I start up TextEdit, it's going to ask me what screen mode I want it to be. There's some other options here like best mode, screen mode, but I'm going to keep it at requester here because that'll help illustrate my point here. So let's start up TextEdit. And so TextEdit asks me, well, we're going to start up a new screen. What kind of screen do you want it to be? For this demonstration, I'm going to send it to my Spectrum. And for whatever reason, TextEdit asked for this twice. But we can see we now have a new screen with TextEdit in it. And if I want to switch back to the workbench screen, I can click this gadget up here in the top to shuffle through my different screens that I have available. Just like you would do with Windows. And also, although this is somewhat dependent upon the video card, you can also do dragging here. So I can see both of my screens. I can drag this one up and down and see both of them, or at least part of both of them, at the same time. Now doing that, I'm going to start up a new program, and you see I have this program called CodeCraft, which is an IDE, a simple one for Amiga OS development. If I put information here and look at the tool types, it's also going to pub screen text edit. So if I start this up, you can see I now have CodeCraft in this screen with my other text editor. So this is a very early form of what I guess you would call today virtual desktops, and was built into Amiga OS from day one. Now let's talk about multi-monitors a little bit. So to deal with all these different screen modes, we use a program in Amiga OS. There's actually 3 options, I think, but in my opinion, the best one is something called P96. Although because of either trademark or licensing terms or something like that, you can't call it Picasso 96 anymore. It's called P96, but but we all know it's really Picasso 96. And there's also CyberGraphics and EGS, and these systems are what are called retargetable graphics systems. So they let me, move the display of video from the native Amiga video to graphics cards. And in the latest versions of Picasso 96, there's really good support, or I should say improved support, for multiple monitors. So when you install P96, it comes with this P96 Prefs program. Now, longtime users who haven't used the latest version will say, well, this looks different. And that's because it was rewritten for, I think, version 3.4. So if you have an earlier version, this is going to look completely different. It's a completely different UI design. But so what I've done in here is I've set up my spectrum, and I have 2 screen modes defined here, 640 by 480 and 800 by 600. And then I've also set up my Retina card, and I just have 1 screen mode defined here, 640 by 480. Now, you could go overboard and define all kinds of different screens and color depths, and then at least for the primary workbench screen, you would go in here to screen mode, and you would see all these in a list that you could select from, and that would be your primary workbench screen. These are all also then available for public screens. So that would allow me to put screens onto different monitors. So let me switch my scene here in Open Broadcast Studio and bring up the Retina. Hopefully this doesn't crash. And I'll show you kind of what dual screen operation looks like. So I'm now displaying output from both monitors, although there's nothing being displayed on the Retina right now, so it's just a blank screen. But the primary screen is the big legible one up here in the left, and then the Retina, which unfortunately I have to overlap the primary screen a little bit, it's going to be the smaller one here in the right. So if I want to open up a screen on the Retina, I'm going to reuse this text edit example, but before I do that, I have to switch to this screen and exit all the applications in it. And as part of cleanup, that'll deallocate that screen. So now I'm going to open up my text edit application again, and this time I'm not going to override the default that I set. So this is going to be sent to the Retina. And now we can see video output on both monitors. Now, again, this Retina display is pretty horrible. I don't expect you to read any of the text here. I don't think I'm going to keep this set up, so I didn't want to fiddle around with trying to get exactly the perfect video. And I think this is good enough to show my point. But I now have two screens. Now, some things to note about this. First is the mouse, if you notice, is captive in this screen. It cannot go to the other screen. But if I click the shuffle gadget up here in the top, the mouse cursor will switch back to the other screen. And the reason for this, presumably, is because both the mouse and the windows in this are captive in their own screen. Unlike more modern implementations of this, I can't move individual windows between different screens. They are stuck on the screen that they are in. And so the mouse is also kind of captive. But like I say, if I click this shuffle gadget up here, it'll switch me back and forth between the two screens. Now, one of the more recent features of P96 is a commodity called P96 Screen CX. And what this allows me to do is to actually have the mouse cursor be able to move between screens. Now, it does this by kind of faking mouse movements on different screens, at least according to the README. But it does seem to work pretty okay in practice. Now, normally I would have this put in my Workbench startup directory and have it, come up on startup. And I may need to reboot if this doesn't work after startup, but we'll see. But the way this works is if I go back into my preferences and go over here to the P96 prefs, there are some new options in here for each video card. And so these are above, below, left of, right of. Now, as you can imagine, these are orientation commands, or orientation tool types, I should say, right? So this allows you to kind of arrange your monitors and tell P96 how they're arranged. Now, on the Spectrum, I don't have any, and that's because this is my kind of primary anchored display. So the other option that's important here is display chain. Now, it's fairly common for Amiga video cards to have it set up where the native Amiga video passes through the video card and then out through the same cable as the video card's display output itself. And so this is so you only have to have one monitor on your desk, right? The Spectrum has a feature like this. The Picasso 4 card has a feature like this. Not only does it pass through, but it also scan doubles and flicker fixes. And cards from Phase 5 and from other vendors have similar functionality. So when I have this display chain on, that tells Picasso 96 that not only can the cable and monitor attached to this video card display the video card resolutions, but it can also display the Amiga native video output. And this is just relevant so it doesn't get confused. If this is off, sometimes you get confusing results. But so this is my anchor monitor, so it doesn't have a left of, right of, or a below. But if I look at my Retina card down here, you can see my Retina card is to the right of native. And this is where that chained displays come in. If I didn't have my Amiga native video chained to my in division, this would say right of Spectrum. And again, this is just for kind of ordering where the displays are, right? So the The output from the Retina is to the right of the output from the Spectrum and vice versa. So, in theory, and we'll see if I need to do a reboot here or not, if I activate this P96 screen CX, it's going to read that right of, left of, above, below, etc. It's going to read all those tool types. And when I move my cursor to the edge of this screen, it's going to show up on the other one. And so no longer is the cursor tied to a particular screen, but it can go back and forth. And that's much more modern, right? That's how most modern multi-display systems work. Now, unfortunately, this P96 Screen CX doesn't modernize any of the other aspects, right? Windows, for example, are still tied to the screen that they're in. You can't drag them between screens. But at least it does make the cursor move between screens quite nicely. And, you know, that actually makes a big difference when you're using this. Not having to go up and hit the shuffle gadget when you want to change screens, and just being able to naturally move the cursor between them is a big boon. So anyhow, that went a little long, but I hope it was interesting and gives people right now an idea of the state of multi-monitor support in classic Amiga OS. Now, I kind of hope that maybe we will see some advancements of this from the community in the future. We'll see. Maybe, maybe not. But I feel this is something pretty cool that not a lot of Amiga users know about. So, hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.